Welcome, everyone. I'm Mary Vandenplas, Director of Operations and Research here at Burtch Works. Today, we will be sharing the extended analysis from our 2020 SAS, R, or Python flash survey, which examines tool preferences among data scientists and analytics professionals. This video will include overall tool preferences, preferences examined by experience, region, industry, education, and more, multi-year trends for key areas, tool preferences for data scientists versus others in analytics, plus our thoughts on learning tools and other career insights. If you're not familiar with Burtch Works, we are an executive recruiting firm specializing in quantitative fields like analytics, data science, and marketing research. We're the leading resource for insights about the hiring market, including our comprehensive salary reports. Our data and insights have been repeatedly mentioned in the press, and this year Burtch Works was once again recognized by Forbes as one of America's best recruiting firms. And a quick introduction to our speaker today. Stefan Valentine has spent several years recruiting actuaries and predictive modelers in the insurance industry, and he now partners with Katie Ferguson on the quantitative analytics team at Burtch Works. Stefan has enjoyed working in the quantitative space because of the fast pace of the market and the ever-evolving changes in the analytics field. Stefan's knowledge of the quantitative talent landscape allows him to share his insights in numerous blogs and webinars, in addition to speaking to university students on the intricacies of quantitative careers. Stefan has been actively involved in the analytics community, participating in groups like the American Statistical Association and Informs, and contributing his insights to the Burtch Works blog. And now, Stefan will share our data with you. Over to you, Stefan.
Thanks, Mary, and thank you everyone for being here today. I'm excited to kind of dive into these insights and hope you will find what we have found informative and exciting. So this year, we analyzed votes from over 1,000 data scientists and predictive analytics professionals to see how preferences have varied by a variety of factors and to look at how they've kind of changed over the past few years. This year, Python once again claimed first place in our survey, rising to 47% of the votes, with R coming in at second at 29% and SAS in third with 23%. When we look a bit at the results of our surveys over the last 7 years, you can see that things have changed quite a bit. In 2014 and 2015, we were just examining SAS versus R. We added Python in 2016 due to popular demand. Since then, Python has more than doubled from 20% in 2016 to 47% of the votes in 2020. In 2018, all three tools were neck and neck, but last year, Python pulled ahead. In nearly every segment that we've analyzed this year, we continue to see support for Python increasing. Now, one of the most fascinating parts of this survey is being able to segment the data and see how tool preferences vary depending on various demographic factors. So let's dive in. First up, we looked at the years of quantitative work experience for each of the data scientists and analytics professionals in our sample. Since Burtch Works is a recruiting firm, we don't ask professionals how old they are. However, we do know their years of quantitative work experience, which takes into account how many years since they first entered the analytics or data science fields. This might be after university, or for those who have changed careers, the moment when they transitioned into their data science or analytics career. As you can see, support for Python is very high among those at the early career level with 5 or less years of experience, and support for SAS is highest among professionals with more than 21 years of experience. We also examined preferences for a sample of college and graduate students in our network, which includes those graduating in the classes of 2019 to 2022. They could be doing internships, post-grad work, or maybe are newly graduated and not quite in an analytics or data science position yet. Unsurprisingly, over 90% of these students preferred open source tools like R and Python. When we look at preferences among professionals with 1 to 5 years of experience over the 5 years since Python was added to our survey, it's clear that Python is gaining considerably and has replaced R as the tool of choice for these early career professionals. Python support among professionals with 5 or fewer years of experience has jumped from 24% in 2016 to over 57% in 2020. Next, let's take a look at how preferences vary depending on a professional's industry of employment. As you can see here from the light green bars, Python leads in every industry segment that we analyzed. As in past years, Python votes for the highest at tech and telecom firms. Last year, for the first time, Python managed to pull ahead of SAS in both the financial services and healthcare and pharmaceutical sectors. And we see this continuing to gain ground in 2020. In financial services, Python has been gaining substantially since 2016, catapulting from 15% of the vote in 2016 to 44% in 2020. This shift in tool preferences comes as more financial services firms are supporting open source tools like R and Python, or at least allowing them. We've also seen several major financial services employers, which began to transition away from SAS a few years ago, complete the transition to open source tools in recent years. So let's take a closer look at preferences among professionals employed at tech and telecom firms, as well as in consulting organizations. Tech has always highly favored open source tools, and Python overtook R as the tool of choice starting in 2017. And it's continued to climb even higher in 2020, now with 60% of the vote. Preferences in consulting have been a bit more mixed, but this year, Python leaped ahead of both SAS and R, mainly eroding support from SAS. We also examined how preferences shifted in various geographic regions. This year, Python continues to lead in every region that we examined and was highest in the West Coast. Python has also continued to gain in both the Midwest and Southeast, where SAS had held the lead in 2018, but was slightly overtaken last year. Here you can see that Python has gained substantially among our West Coast sample this year. And on the right, you can see just how much things have changed in the Southeast. Back in 2016, only 12% of our Southeast sample favored Python, but it's now up to 41% in 2020. We also looked at how preferences vary depending on academic degree and area of study, so let's take a look. While PhD holders have consistently favored open source tools like R and Python due to their use in academic research settings, last year, Python took the lead among bachelor's and master's degree holders as well, where SAS still held a slight lead in 2018. Now we can see that while Python leads for all groups, the rest of the bachelor's and master's degree sample is fairly evenly split between R and SAS. Support for R is also highest among PhD holders. And when comparing the four-year trend for both PhD and master's degree holders, we see that although Python support has been climbing among both groups, in the last year, it rose more dramatically among master's degree holders. A new factor that we added to our analysis last year was the area of study for the respondents' highest degree earned, which we also showcase in our salary reports. And this has revealed some very interesting tool preference trends. Those in the social sciences showed the strongest preference for R. Professionals whose area of study was engineering, computer science, and natural sciences all overwhelmingly preferred Python. Support for SAS was strongest among business degree holders, although Python still leads overall in that segment. In our recent salary study, we noted that data scientists whose main focus is analyzing unstructured or streaming data are far more likely than other predictive analytics professionals to come from a computer science, engineering, or natural science educational background. And along those lines, now let's take a look at one of the more stark preference comparisons that we have examined, data scientists versus other predictive analytics professionals. While Burtch Works has always regarded data scientists as a specialized subset of predictive analytics professionals, we usually separate data scientists and predictive analytics professionals in our salary reports and other analyses to compare the two groups. This is primarily because of the differences in skill sets that results in differing salary bands, but as we pointed out in our recent salary report, there are a number of demographic distinctions between the two groups as well, such as common areas of study or industries of employment. As we've defined them, data scientists work primarily with unstructured or streaming data, whereas other predictive analytics professionals mostly focus on structured data. Although the two areas are becoming more blended as of late, we thought it might be interesting to show how their tool preferences differ. Here you can see the 5-year trend for both predictive analytics professionals on the left and data scientists on the right. Data scientists have always favored open source tools, especially Python, with SAS receiving no votes among this group in 2019. Data scientists are the segment with the most stark contrast between tools, and over 70% of them favor Python. Among predictive analytics professionals, who primarily focus on structured data, tool preferences were a bit more mixed, but Python managed to get ahead of SAS in 2019 and continued to climb a bit further in 2020 as well. So which tool should you learn? This is a very common question we get, especially since there are so many options available now. As you can probably guess, there is no one-size-fits-all answer. While SAS is still used by some more traditional teams, such as those in financial services and pharmaceuticals, many are now allowing support for and even transitioning to open source options like R and Python, and this shift is likely to continue. The best thing you can do is take a look at the job descriptions for the industries or companies where you think you might want to work and see what they're looking for. Regardless of which tool you learn, if you only know one tool, your options may be limited. The more tools you're familiar with, the more adaptable you can be. And since this industry is constantly evolving, it's important to keep learning new tools in order to keep your skills up to date with the market. There are a lot of online resources like Coursera, Udacity, Kaggle, and much more where you can learn new tools and practice applying your skills. The more you can demonstrate your abilities with different tools, the more marketable you'll be when you're looking for a job. If you're looking for more information about the data science and analytics market, I'll throw it back to Mary so she can tell you about a few additional resources that we have for you here at Burtch Works.
Thank you so much, Stefan. That was all some really great info. And as you said, if you're looking for more information, you can find our salary and demographic data for data scientists and analytics professionals in our recent salary report, which is downloadable for free at burtchworks.com/study. In it, we provide hiring market insights, salaries examined with medians, quartiles, and means, demographic analysis, and salaries broken down by region, industry, education, gender, and more. This year, we also included a special section on our research on how COVID-19 has impacted the analytics hiring market, as well as student and professionals working in these fields. And for more hiring market insights, check out our blog, burtchworks.com/blog, where you can access career guides, hiring trends, and other surveys on current trends. And you can follow Burtch Works across our social media channels to stay up to date on our latest research. Our YouTube channel has videos on salary research, career development, and much more, all tailored specifically for analytics professionals and data scientists. And now it's time for the question and answer segment of the talk. So we've got a few questions for you, Stefan. I hope you're ready. And let's get started, I think, with perhaps not the one most aligned with the topic of today's webinar, but I think the one that's most on the mind of most professionals these days. As a recruiter in the analytics and data science space, with the pandemic, what are you seeing in the market right now? How is the job market?
Oh, wow. It was a nice 15 minutes without thinking about coronavirus, but I guess it's on everyone's mind these days. We've seen kind of an interesting, trend in the market kind of as the pandemic has kind of unfolded. We were tracking the number of job postings for data scientists across multiple sites at the very beginning of this in March when everything started to get kind of bad. We noticed a pretty drastic reduction in the number of postings that were kind of coming up across various sites. And then, we noticed kind of in the summer, things picked up back a little bit, especially on the East Coast. And it kind of has followed the trajectory of kind of the news cycle a little bit, when things are a little bit more optimistic about, either the economy or kind of health outcomes. It seems like hiring tends to pick up when things get a little more negative. It slows down a little bit. So it's been a little touch and go, but we're fairly optimistic about, how things are going to kind of unfold next year, especially as, the vaccine rolls out and, everyone's a bit more positive about the outcomes of the pandemic. And, the sentiment we've gotten from our clients is just that, analytics is still a huge priority for a lot of companies. And those who have, pre-pandemic, we're going to make data a priority and wanted to build up strong teams are going to continue to want to do so. Once things are a little bit more back to normal, And we think that they're going to make it a priority again, and things will pick up rather quickly. So things are getting better, and we only kind of expect them to get better from here.
All right, thank you, Stefan. It's always nice to have some optimism these days.
Oh yeah.
And as far as the SAS Python survey and the discussion we're having here, what is the most useful tool I can teach myself to remain competitive in the market? I know you kind of addressed this already, but if you could go into a little more detail.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we kind of mentioned in the presentation, there obviously isn't a one-size-fit-all answer. It depends on kind of the industries you're hoping to land within. But then even, we mentioned there, things are converging. And, we maybe could say more confidently a few years ago that if you wanted to be in financial services, you maybe should focus on SAS. That might not be the case anymore. So it's difficult to recommend one, but you can also see kind of the trends that we are seeing. We see Python growing in popularity very quickly. I talk to more junior level people every day, and people coming out of college, the main tool that they're interested in is Python. That's what they've been using in their academic studies. And I think that if you have such a big pool of younger professionals coming in using Python, that's only going to push that trend farther. So if you had to pick one, I would definitely recommend Python, just because we've seen that grow in popularity so quickly, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. But I think it's also important just to kind of stay aware of different trends, and you never know when a new tool is going to come on the market and maybe might replace Python someday. So the most important thing, I think, perhaps, other than suggesting one specific tool, stay ahead of the trends. If you see something grow in popularity, get some exposure to it, and keep yourself kind of competitive and marketable on the market. But if I had to pick one, definitely add Python to your skill set for sure.
All right, that's some good advice. And here's a resume question, which I know you've talked a lot about before, Stefan. How can I show knowledge of a specific tool on my resume if I don't use it in my job? So like if you're using Python in your job right now, but you also have R on your skill set.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think a lot of people, especially as they get into, their first or second job, they start taking off things that they did in their, academic programs. They take off personal projects. And I understand that sentiment a lot, because, you want to keep your resume clear and concise and, short. And obviously professional experience is kind of the most important part. But it also is important to contextualize the work that you've done with specific tools. So if, like you said, Mary, you have experience with Python in your job, but you also have used R, you want to find a way to show that on your resume so that you can contextualize your abilities. Because if you only see, R in the skills section, when I'm looking at the resume, I don't actually know that you can use R and that you're able to kind of do really good work with it. So the best way I can maybe suggest, adding in a tool that you're not using in your day-to-day, try to find some side project maybe that you're doing on your own. Maybe you did a Kaggle competition. Maybe there was something in an academic project you did way back when, where you can show that you used this tool, because it really helps to contextualize it. And if you don't have anything like that, then maybe find some kind of project you can work on. Take on a passion project, side project, where you can really dive into some data with a specific tool, and show that your experience is concrete, that you've actually used it in a real world setting. So a short project section where you can run through one or two projects in a couple of points will really help to kind of show that your abilities extend beyond a basic knowledge.
All right, and then I think this will be our final question. And it has to do with, job descriptions and what you'll be expected to do when you start in your new position. So if I prefer using Python, but a job description says most of the work is done in R, will I be expected to mostly use R in that position?
Yeah, I think this is another question where the answer is it kind of depends. Specific companies, of course, are going to have different infrastructures in terms of their analytics function. They're going to have different preferences. A lot of the time, if the job description says nothing but R, you're probably going to be doing a lot of the work in R. And that, like I said, it has either to do with kind of what they've built or kind of what everyone else on the team is using. A lot of the time, I hear from different clients, that they specifically need someone who can build a predictive model, for example, in R. And chances are that you're not going to be able to go off on your own and use Python when building that model. But we also see a lot of people who say, if you have a specific task where you really think that Python is a better tool for it, maybe you need to collect data through web scraping, and it's much easier to do that in Python. A lot of the time, I don't see a lot of companies saying you can't use Python for that task if it suits you better, or you can't use R because you like the visualization packages in it better. Generally, there's a little bit of flexibility in terms of when you can use what tool, but generally there's also a kind of centralized infrastructure that they expect you to use. So that's always also a great question to ask in initial interviews, just to get a sense of what tools they're using, what kind of flexibility is there, and if there isn't any flexibility and that's important to you, then it might not be the best fit for you. But long story short, kind of depends, but oftentimes there's a little bit of flexibility on certain tasks.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you so much, Stefan, for answering all those questions. And thank you everybody for joining us. If you would like to see if we have roles that are a fit for your experience or to discuss hiring needs, send us an email at info@burtchworks.com to start the process. Have a great rest of your day.